Hey YouTube, how's it going? Today I wanted to talk a little bit about idle games and what like the future like for idle games, or where can we go with idle games, because when you think about an idle game, I think like Cookie Clicker is probably like the most original, or there's a lot of like web browser based ones where it's just a very simple concept. You do something to get some type of currency, income, whatever to spend in the game, and then you can upgrade things that in the short term might mean less efficiency, you're getting less, but in the long term, you get a lot more. And so all that is just macroeconomics. It's just what can I do now that will be to my benefit later, and how do we keep that going? How do we, speaking from the point of view of the developers, how do we make people continue to play? Or how do we add depth to the game? And that depth is by adding new mechanics, new things to spend money on. And it's really just like, I don't want to say it's like a time waste simulator, but it's really, you're making money in the game in order to make more money in the game, which enables you to make more money in the game, which then lets you buy cooler looking things that make you more money. So, but they're fun. Like, if you've ever played one, like, they're addicting, and they're good. Instead of considering an idle game, I'd really consider it like an alt-tab game, where it's a game where you can play for a bit, set things up, and then you just let it run for a bit. I don't want to upgrade, I guess. And there's a lot of games that are close to that, but they're not quite that. So a good example, I'd say, is Teamfight Tactics, Auto Chess, Auto Battlers, the whole genre of Auto Battlers. They're a very similar but more fast-paced idle game, where you set something up, and then the actual microing of the game is non-existent. It's all about macro. It's all about what you set up beforehand, and if your setup beforehand is good enough to beat the enemy's setup beforehand. And I really think, thinking about it, the progenitor of like those type of things was really like Clash of Clans, if you've ever played it. That game came out years and years ago when I was in college, and that was one of those, you set up a base for defense, you pick an army for offense, and then it's hands off. You let it run, and you see what happens. So, the whole reason I sort of made this sort of talk is, I watch a lot of Twitch streams. That's like pretty much all I do on my second monitor, is I just have a stream on. A lot of people I like to enjoy watching. But I enjoy it because I'm working, and I can't play a game myself, so I enjoy watching someone else play the game. You can play a little bit vicariously through them. So, if you think about it, these games sort of also do that, right? Like, a Clash of Clans, like, you set things up and it just plays for you. But people still enjoy that. And I've been thinking, excuse me, and I've been thinking with, you know, so many people that watch Twitch streams and all that, and that enjoy this type of gameplay, are there more places we can go with that genre of idle game or passive game, where you set something up and watch it run, but in a new way? So I don't mean just, you know, make another clicker type game where instead of making cookies, you're making sponges or something, and it's some like weird quirky thing. But I mean more like, what if there was a fighting game type idle game where, say, you select your characters attacks, you select their, you have a stat page where you can only attribute so many. You give them a certain reaction time, a certain durability, a certain type of attacks. And then you could also manage the macro level of the enemies. So again, the whole idea would be you have a character that it's just there fighting, it fights continuously. And the only time, and then you have breaks, or you could pretty much probably take a break or change things whenever you want, and you just watch it. You just have fun enjoying this thing you've created, or this setup you've set up, so to speak. And, just watch it run and see how much you enjoy it. And then if you don't like how it's going, you change things accordingly. So I'm curious how, if you're not a developer, as a gamer, what do you think about that? If you are a developer, do you have any ideas that are like that? And this isn't like idea fishing, it's just like, it's a genuine question of like, are there other like interesting idle-ish type games you can do where it's all macro, but the payoff for the macro is something more exciting than just a cookie being clicked or a number going up on the screen. So I think a good example of a game that could actually do this is ARPGs. Because if you think about a game like Path of Exile, there's extremely little micro in the game. It's all about how you set your build up. The actual execution of mostly every build is a single button press. It's you press this button, everything dies, you go to the new pack, everything dies. But the fun in the game is figuring out or setting it up in the way you want it to blow up the screen, right? Instead of just saying, you can blow up the screen, just do it any way you want. But it's how you decided to do it that makes Path of Exile like such an endearing game, because there's so many different ways to do it that when you find one that you feel like other people haven't done, it's rewarding, because it feels like that's my build. That's not, it's not everybody can do that because I thought of it. So if you think about it, the only real thing you need to do, outside of bosses, of course, is automate movement, which is very easy, because you build map layouts, so you can obviously build an automated map layout. And then I can do corruption for one of these. No, these are all trash upgrades. And then you automate targeting, which is also very easy to do. Because automated targeting, you could do, and you could allow for some optimization. You could target nearest, you could target largest clump, you could target strongest enemies. Bloons does this. Bloons tower defense. And Bloons, to some regard, if you made an endless mode, where the player chooses the difficulty they go up against and not a preset, progressively harder number of waves. Bloons could be considered an AFK AOL game. Just make it infinitely scaling. Excuse me. Make it infinitely scaling. Give people control over the level of difficulty of the waves that come out, and allow people to customize really how they, or give them some currency to earn to then spend on upgrades to build the defense they want for the offense they choose. And that they get that dynamic of choosing, making a build they want, and they get rewarded by choosing harder and harder things instead of having the game decide what's harder and harder and then have a set limit on that. So what do you think? You know, could an ARPG be made into an idle game? Would you play one? Because a lot of the catharsis for ARPGs is it's just watching the screen blow up. It's the payoff for all those hours or however long you put into setting up the build. It's the payoff for setting it up. So, do you think that could be a thing? Would you play that? What are some other genres of games that you think could be made into idle games? What are some other genres you think could be made into idle games that that aren't already? And again, I know this sounds like just fishing for ideas, but there's 1,000 ideas for games. It's execution that's the hard part. So it's really just food for thought, and maybe spark some ideas in other developers, because that's really like, you know, I have 1,000 ideas in my head for games to make and cool things I'd like to see made, but the reality is I don't have the time or the resources to do that. So I talk about things like this and, you know, the hopes that someone will make something like this. It's not for me, it's for someone else. Because, you know, I can't make everything I want to make, unfortunately. So if this sparks an idea in someone else, more power to you. Because I would buy it. These are game ideas that I would want to play. What's another idea? I don't know. What's another genre? I was thinking of it like some shooting type game. It kind of has to be on rails. So my original thought for ARPGs was it sets you have a predetermined path. Your character either automatically follows it or doesn't. And then they attack based on some preferred targeting system. And then you make some currency. So, you know, what fits good on that? If you think of like 2D side-scroller fighters from back in the day, that fits perfectly because the only like macro or micro there is just going one direction and then dodging. Oh, you can probably optimize or give your players options to optimize the targeting. So they either take as much or as little, or they evade as much or as little as you, as they want to. They could just be a super tank. They could be a glass cannon that maxes evasion. And I think what you'll find probably is that a lot of people will actually enjoy this, even though it's not them doing it. They set it up. So it feels just as good to watch it happen as it does to actually do the micro movements. At least in my opinion. Again, I don't know. And that's the whole point of this, you know, food for thought discussion. What do you think about that? So on that topic, with you know, idle games, or sometimes called incremental games, how can you design it so that the player has as much or as little freedom as they want? So I think the ideal idle game, going back to the ARPG example or incremental game, is one that, say you're working, you're in a boring meeting, but you got some ideas floating around in your head, so you think, okay, if I do this, that, optimize here, there, I can up my damage, I could probably send higher level enemies at myself, and then, you know, I'll make more so I can upgrade in a couple hours when I check back on the game. But what if something comes up? Oh, excuse me. Bubble in my throat. What if something comes up they let you out early on a Friday or something. Well, you got a lot of time to play the game, so what do you do? Because you can't really do anything, because it's an incremental game. That's where I think this dynamic of you leave it incremental, but allow it to be controllable. So you literally just give them a button that says take control, and you give people more rewards for manually controlling things, so they can play as much or as little as they want, and they get rewarded for it. They get rewarded for playing, but if they're not manually playing, they still progress in the game. Because a lot of games nowadays, in my previous video, I talk about it, this job, so to speak, or progression to keep playing the game to unlock cool things in the game, which requires you to keep playing the game to unlock the cool things, so you can finally play the game with the cool things. I put it a lot better in the video, but that's the gist of it. So, to allow people to continue to play the game, or to not feel like they have to play the game in order to progress, to set something up and just let it run, I think there's a lot to that, you know, based on where game design's going. I think there's a lot to that. I think it's not novel, but like a good idea going forward to really try to give players this automated gameplay if they want that, and then if they want to take over, they can. If you are making your game this progression unlock based system where players don't have everything, they don't have access to everything, but they can get access to everything, give them the opportunity to literally let the game run, enjoy the game from a visual and like macro aesthetic, and then let them choose to do the micro when they want to. What do you think? Do you think people would be into that? Would they not? I'm genuinely curious, because I would. Because I have a lot of friends that are looking for like a not too hardcore game. They can play it sort of at their leisure, like a lot of hours now, not a lot of hours another time. Because I like Teamfight Tactics a lot. I like auto battlers. Like, I played Clash of Clans, I played Teamfight Tactics and Auto Chess when they came out. But the thing that turned me off on those was the game time. It's like guaranteed 30 minutes. And what if you don't want to spend 30 minutes? Like, you have an idea for a build, you want to try it out, but what if you don't have 30 minutes? What if you only have 10, 15? What if you're on a train or a bus? You don't have 45 minutes. The games could go long sometimes. That feels like shit. If you're playing the game, you have 30 minutes. It goes really long, and you have some arrangement that you have to get to. You just can't play that game? That sucks. And I think, as a game designer, that sucks too. That's one of the reasons I love Rocket League so much. The movement in the game is awesome. But, one of the other things I love about it is it's 5 minutes. It's 5 minutes. Sometimes it could go 7, 8 minutes, if it's a very even game. But it's 5 minutes. If you have 10 minutes to play a game, you can play a round of Rocket League. And short of a crazy stalemate where no one's scoring, you're getting out of that game, win or lose. And that's, I think, the problem with some of these idle games, is they're optimized for playtime. But what about people that have very inconsistent playtimes? Like, sometimes they might have an hour, but if they're on call for their job, what if they only have 10 minutes, 5 minutes? What if they don't want to play an hour-long game of League and Dota? That's why I stopped playing those games, is because it's just such a time commitment that I really don't want to put the time into. I don't want to feel like I either have to bail out of the game where I have to tell people, like, sorry, I'm late for this thing because I was stuck in a game because I really didn't want to lose because I'm a very competitive person. You know? So, I guess the question really becomes, what's the market for those people? How big is that market of people that are working, they want to spend very varied amounts of time in the game? Your average player doesn't want to always play for an hour or two. Say your average game time is 2 hours, or your average play time per session is like 2 hours. Maybe that's not what they want to do. They don't want to play for 2 hours. And what percentage of that is your ideal player base? Pretty good upgrade. So yeah, just food for thought. Bit of a rant, but I mean, it's not even a rant. I'm not complaining about anything. I'm just, how do you feel about that? What do you think is the future for those types of games? And is there a game that you can make that gives you both of those? So, New World, for example, an MMO, and there's bots in the game that do a lot of the mundane things, fishing, mining. But there's a lot of people that enjoy doing those things, but the question is, why do they enjoy doing those things? I don't think it's because they enjoy the actual act of doing it. Some do. But it's because they like the macro that they get. Okay, I farmed 2,000 iron, so now I can do this, make this money, which allows me to buy this and upgrade this, XYZ. Again, I'm saying this because the specifics don't really matter if you boil it down to like the core elements of what the game's about. And it's like that with a lot of... So, could you allow people to, like, literally build in botting to your game to keep people, I guess, playing in a very loose sense, but to keep people engaged when they can't literally micro the game? Like, if they have some downtime at work for a couple of minutes, they can, change their mining route or something like that. And then they could keep the game running, but they could keep working. They don't feel like they have to set time aside for the game. Do you? For sure, you'd get a lot more casual players, but is there room for both the micro and macro in a game? And how do you balance it so that the micro, so that you're rewarded for microing, but not rewarded too much over the macro player? There's moves or there's mechanics of the game that you can use as the macro player in order to not feel like you're massively so far behind that you have to be playing constantly, otherwise you're just left behind. What do you think? Would you play a game like that you could do both? Oh fuck, that was retarded. Well, that's a good spot to end on. Would you play a game where these games that increasingly demand more of your time, and you can give it that time without feeling like you constantly have to be physically playing? You have to be microing your character, you have to be moving different zones to different areas to do stuff, to acquire currency in the game, to do more stuff. I think a lot of people would. I would. If I would keep New World running a shitload of time. If it meant I was making some small amount of currency in the game, and then I'd hop in and out to change that up if I think I see some opportunity in the market or whatever it might be. And then I would still play the game because the actual game is fun. But I would watch my character play the game when I can't play the game, when I'm too busy. Yeah. What do you think? I have a good idea for a game I didn't mention in this. I'll probably mention in a follow-up video. And, you know, what do you think about that? So, this went a bit long. I'll probably cut a little bit out of it here and there, but thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.